Showing off, don't wanna have to wait tonight. Wait tonight, better off. I'm gonna find my way tonight. Wait tonight, won't you talk to me? I wanna heal your sorrow. Won't you talk to me? We'll make a new tomorrow. Won't you talk to me? What makes this happy face? Showing off, don't wanna have to wait tonight. Wait tonight, better off. I'm gonna find my way tonight. Wait tonight, won't you talk to me? I wanna heal your sorrow. Won't you talk to me? We'll make a new tomorrow. Won't you talk to me? What makes this happy face do?
All right, here we are. Oh. That's right. I noticed this earlier and then forgot all about it. Got to fix the captions again. Sorry. All right, so does that get us started? How we doing? Yep, okay. Okay, so we are ready for the next chapter of Crosscurrent. Once I get it opened here. Here we go. All right, chapter 10. All right, so if you remember last time, our two timelines have come together, and now we're in the present for it looks like probably the rest of the book. Oh, here we go. Sayes watched on the view screen as the remaining blades peeled out of the gas giant's rings. Laird monitored the chatter among the pilots through an earpiece, then relayed it to Sayes. "The target has been destroyed, Captain," Laird said, his round face flush with the news. "Collided with rocks in the rings. We lost 6 blades in the pursuit." Sayes nodded, surprised to find himself so unmoved by Rellen's death. He supposed whatever attachment he might have had with Rellen had been eroded by time and lost long ago. He reached out his consciousness for his master, trying to recall the feelings he'd had when he realized that Rellen had been aboard Harbinger. He felt nothing, only emptiness, a hole. He was alone now, 5,000 years in the future. His one-time master had died a fool. Sayes regretted the loss of the blades, particularly since he would not be able to replace them. But he'd need to end matters with Rellen. Matters with Rellen. Put us in orbit around the planet's moon. I will be in my quarters. When repairs are complete, should the helm plot a course to Primus Golud? Laird asked. Sayes heard 8L6's servos whir as he stood and looked at the captain. No, Sayes said. Plans have changed. Kedron tried to slow his still racing heart as Jaden set Junker down in a deep, sheltered declivity on one of the large asteroids in the rings. His equilibrium was still off from the wild flight, and he swayed as he stood. After confirming that the cargo hold's airlock had resealed and repressurized, he opened the hatch to check on his searing. Still there, along with Mars' speeder bike. Good, Kedron loved that swoop. By the time he reached the galley, Relin was already there, sitting at the central table. Sweat glistened on his face, and his eyes looked like glassy, distant pools sunk in the deep pits of his sockets. His breathing came fast, like that of a rabid animal. You're sick, Kedron said. Relin looked up, squinting at Kedron. Yes, radiation. Kedron tried to look sympathetic. I have nothing aboard, but we can do something for it back on Faust. He left a maybe behind his teeth, seeing no reason to further burden the Jedi over Farpoint's limited medical facilities. Relin stared at him for a long moment. Thank you. And the ribs, the arm? Relin looked at his stump. I am all right. Kedron could see otherwise, but did not push. He held up a calf cup and changed the subject. Calf? It's a bitter, caffeinated beverage served hot. Tea? Sure, Kedron said, and prepped some tea for the Jedi. It was old, something he'd picked up on a whim months ago, but it was tea. Jaden and Mar entered, neither talking. Jaden looked drawn behind his beard. Sweat dampened the fringe of his brown hair. Mar, of course, looked like Mar, solid, calm, as certain as an equation. Kedron wondered how the Sarian managed such balance. I will take some of that calf, Mar said, staring at Relin with unabashed curiosity. Jaden explained matters to me. I'll take some too, said Jaden. His voice had the sound of a man who had not slept in a few days. Take a seat, please, Kedron said to them both, his tone more formal than he intended. Mar looked a question at him as he crossed the room, but Kedron, still composing his thoughts, ignored it. He spiked his calf with a jigger of pulque, then poured calf for Jaden and Mar, joined it on a tray with Relin's tea, and took it to the table. Nice flying, he said to Jaden. It was, Relin said, wincing in pain in answer to one pain or another. Well done, Jaden. Thank you, Jaden said. He seemed to notice Relin's physical condition for the first time. Are you all right? He asked, the question as loaded as a charged blaster. Relin sat up straight, cleared his throat, and it turned into a soft cough. I am fine. Kedron distributed the drinks. He's not all right. He's sick. Radiation. And the arm and ribs. I know all that, Jaden said, his eyes still on Relin. That's not what I mean. Kedron realized that the Jedi were having a conversation at some level invisible to him. I am fine, Relin repeated, but he glanced away. Jaden sipped his calf and looked unconvinced. To Relin, Mar said, assuming both ships got to near light speed, you would have traveled a long way for 5,000 years to pass relatively. Kedron knew Mar must have been discomfited to use words like near and a long way. Yes, Relin agreed. He looked at Mar. My name is Relin. Mar, I have so many questions. They'll have to wait. I suppose so, Mar said. Good calf, Jaden said to Kedron, holding up the mug. Thanks, Kedron said as he took station at the head of the table. He swallowed, then dived in head first. I have been thinking hard about this, and we are done. This is over. He cut off whatever Jaden and Relin would have said with a raised hand and a raised voice. Junker is my ship, mine, and I am not risking her or my crew over a salvage job. This is more than that, Relin said, his glassy eyes fixed like glow lamps on Kedron. You know that already, Captain, Jaden said. Kedron gave no ground. I know it is to you two. To me, this is just another job, and it's gotten too hairy. Do you know why I don't have weapons on Junker, Relin? Because I run. He wagged a finger between himself and Mar. We run. I am a salvager. This is a salvage ship. He realized that he was breathing heavily, that his tone was overly sharp. He took a moment to control himself. Between the calmness of the Jedi and the placidity of Mar, he felt like he was the only one who grasped the danger they had been in. Jaden started to speak, but Kedron pointed a finger at him as if it were loaded. And don't you even consider trying that mind trick nonsense on me again. Jaden half smiled, put his hands on the table, and interlaced his fingers. He studied them as if they were of interest, then looked up at Kedron. You were going to take me down to the moon. We had a deal, Kedron. That hit Kedron where he lived. He did not renege on deals. I know. But Jaden continued in his infuriatingly calm voice. But our agreement aside, I want you to step back and consider what has happened here. You and Mar discovered a distress beacon on a back rocket moon in the unknown regions. Chance, Kedron said, but Jaden continued. I received a force vision of that same moon. In it, voices pleaded with me for help. His voice intensified a degree. For help, Captain. You received a force vision? Relin asked. Did you see anything that suggested my presence or harbingers? Jaden had eyes only for Kedron as he drove home his point. Okay, we meet under extraordinary circumstances in Farpoint, then journey here, and at almost the exact moment of our arrival, an ancient Sith ship appears. Relin piled on, and that ship bears an extremely dangerous cargo. Kedron's response was knee-jerk defensive. So you say. So I say? Relin said, heat leaking into his tone. Jaden held a hand up. Please, Relin. Kedron shook his head. Look, this was supposed to be a simple job. Instead it's something bigger, Jaden said. I was going to say complicated, Kedron said, but if it is about something bigger, then that makes it a Jedi concern, not mine, not ours. Right, Mar? Mar drummed his long fingers on the table, taking it all in. He gave a non-committal grunt that Kedron liked not at all. No, this isn't just a Jedi concern, Jaden said. It concerns you too. Consider all the things I mentioned, the synchronicity of them. It is not chance that we are here together at this moment. It could be chance, Kedron said half-heartedly, but he did not believe his own words. Mar could put a probability to it, had he a mind. No, I'm not doing this. Relin slammed his fist on the table with the suddenness of a lightning strike, startling them all. Calf and T jumped over cup rims. You were a stubborn fool, Kedron Fall. Kedron could handle anger more easily than Jaden's inexorable reasonableness. Better a live fool than a dead fanatic, which is the course you've charted for yourself. You've got radiation poisoning, broken ribs, a severed arm. You haven't even paused long enough for treatment. You haven't even asked for some pharma for the pain or Bacta to help the healing. Relin rose to his feet, anger in his eyes. Kedron's mouth went dry, but he held his ground and made certain nothing on him shook. I do not stop for treatment because I will not shirk doing what needs to be done, even if it causes me pain. You cannot always run, Kedron. Kedron stared into Relin's haggard face, saw there a deeper pain than that of his wounds. He wilted under its weight, sighed, sat. You spilled your tea, he said quietly. Silence took the head chair for a time, everyone letting time deflate the tension. Relin sat too, his anger at Kedron seemingly dispelled as fast as it had appeared. Mar is force sensitive, Jaden said. Did you know that? Did either of you? Kedron spilled some of his own caf. What? How do you know that? Mar said, and Kedron thought he did not sound overly surprised. I can sense it. Relin can as well, I am sure. Relin nodded absently, mostly lost in the depths of his teacup. Jaden looked to Mar. I apologize for springing this on you. I thought I would tell you after we returned to Faust, if I mentioned it at all. What does that even mean, force-sensitive? Kedron asked. It means he has an intuitive connection to the Force, Jaden said. Were he younger, it would mean he was trainable. But given your age, Mar, even with your mathematical gifts, training is probably out of the question. The possibility, even if remote, of losing Mar to the Jedi Order opened a hole under Kedron's feet, and he started to slip. He held up his hands. Whoa, aren't we getting ahead of ourselves a bit? Yes, we are, Mar said, and looked at Jaden. Why did you tell me this now? Because I want all of us to realize that the Force brought you to that signal. You may not have known it, but that is what happened. You selected the route back to Faust, didn't you? Didn't you? He's the navigator, Kedron said. I chose the course, Mar acknowledged. Jaden nodded, obviously unsurprised. It was not chance that you chose this system. The Force is moving through you, through all of us. Not through me, Kedron said, before he could wall the words off behind his teeth. He knew they sounded petulant. He felt the odd man out on his own ship. Jaden put a hand on Kedron's shoulder, and that only made it worse. The Force touches all of us. Look at us. Look. Kedron did, and had to admit that it would have taken an odd coincidence to bring all of them together at that place at that time. Mar, staring at his hands, said, I do not wish any training. Jaden did not seem surprised. Understood. I simply wanted you to see what is happening here. I want all of us to see it. Jaden is right, Relin said. Kedron tried to get his head around events, but could not. He faced the fact that perhaps Jaden was, in fact, right. But could he simply run as he usually did? Time is our enemy, Relin said. Kedron, please. Kedron downed the last of his caf, pleased to find the final sip heavy with bitterness from the pulque. He was almost to the point of surrender. What are you asking us to do? Help us accomplish what needs to be accomplished, Jaden said. I need to get down to the surface of the moon. There is someone down there who needs help. Kedron fired the last of his ammo. And if you go down there and there's nothing? Have you considered that? I've seen that happen before. Jaden shook his head, a bit too fast, a bit too forcefully. That won't happen. Something is transmitting that signal. Jaden, Kedron began. Relin cut him off. I cannot go down to the moon. Kedron set down his calf cup and stared across the table. No, you want to get aboard the cruiser. You said that. It remains crazy even when repeated often. Antique or not, that ship packs more firepower in its shuttles than we do on all of Junker. Relin, Jaden said, I don't think... Relin held up his stump, perhaps forgetting that it had no upraised hand attached. You seemed surprised when I mentioned lignin earlier. He swirled his cup. Were you? Yes, Jaden said. And that tells me that you have never before heard of it or its power. Yet Kedron mentioned Sith, so I know they still exist in this time. Putting the lignin in their hands would be dangerous, yes? Jaden nodded. It would, if it does what you say. Relin's voice frosted. You felt it. Do you doubt what I say to? No, Jaden admitted, but Relin ignored him, continued. And Sayes, the captain of Harbinger, should he figure out what has happened, may try to do exactly that, take it to the Sith, or he may hoard it for himself. But he is very dangerous in either case. I need to destroy either the lignin or the ship. And if he leaves this system, we may never get another chance. I do not have much time. Harbinger's hyperdrive is damaged. The whole ship is reeling from the misjump. This is the moment. Kedron thought he could see Jaden bend under some weight known only to him. The Jedi very much wanted to go down to the moon's surface. When his expression fell, Kedron knew that Jaden, too, had just surrendered. "You are right," Jaden said. "The ore is the greater concern. I am being influenced by personal concerns. The moon can wait. I will accompany you aboard Harbinger." Relin stared into his teacup. "No. Unless you can suppress your force presence altogether, you are unwelcome. Sayes will detect you easily." "You could screen me." "Your presence is too strong, Jaden," Relin said. "Masking it from Sayes would be difficult and an inefficient use of my power." Listening to their exchange, Kedron perceived two men trying to give the other an excuse to do what he wished, all while purporting to want its opposite. "Heed your own words," Relin said to Jaden. "The Force called you to the moon, and that is where you should go. Look to your feelings." "I don't trust my feelings." The admission seemed to take Relin aback. "You cannot accompany me, Jaden. This is for me to do." "My force presence is not strong," Mar said, his words surprising everyone. "I could accompany you." For a long moment no one said anything. Kedron was too stunned to speak. Finally he said, "Why would you do that?" Mar sighed over his calf, shrugged, tilted his head, finally found words. "I told Jaden how I once calculated the probability that my life would go this way or that. Do you remember me telling you the same thing?" Kedron nodded. "Do you know why I did that? It was not just the math. I wanted to confirm that my life would mean something, that I would do something important. But then other things got in the way." "Mar," Kedron said, "I do not regret a moment. You are my great friend. But is salvage all I want to have left behind me? This is a chance to do something meaningful. I concur with Jaden that something other than chance brought us to this moment. It is more likely that you'd win at Sabak than all of this to happen by chance." Kedron smiled despite himself. "That's saying something." Mar continued, "Our lives have led us up to this place, at this moment. How can I run away from that?" Mar did not say it, but Kedron understood Mar to be asking him the same question, and he had no good answer. For him, running away was simple habit. He'd been running away from roots and responsibilities since he'd become an adult. It had worked pretty well for him. Mar looked to Relin. "I will go if you will have me." Jaden started to speak, stopped. Relin stared across the table at Mar. "You've only just met me, and you do not know what I have in mind. Whatever it is, it will require a ship. You'll need a pilot who knows the ship, not to mention one with two hands." Relin tilted his head to acknowledge the point. "The lignin will affect you more strongly up close. You've felt some unease since Harbinger appeared?" Mar nodded. "A headache, mostly. The feelings will be more acute when you are near its source." "For you too," Jaden said to Relin. Mar's brow was smooth, his eyes untroubled. "Even so." "You're certain?" Relin asked. "Too certain, I'd say," Kedron said. "Yes," said Mar, eyeing first Relin, then Kedron. "I am certain." "Very well," Relin said. Kedron shook his head, finished off his calf. "We're all crazy on this boat. I need another calf. Anyone else?" Everyone nodded. "Drinks all around, then," Kedron said, and started to rise. "I will get it, Captain," said Mar. The Sarian rose, placing his hand on Kedron's shoulder as he passed, the small gesture a reminder of the years they had been friends. "Let's talk specifics," Kedron said to the Jedi. "What are your plans?" Relin gestured for Jaden to go first. "I fly down to the moon, find what I'm supposed to find." "Alone?" Jaden nodded. "No," Kedron said. "I'm not leaving my ship down on that moon if you find something unexpected. I can shuttle you down in Flotsam. We'll be able to dodge the cruiser's sensors and get you into the atmosphere. From there you can locate the source of the beacon. But I expect more when we're done. The Order owes me another 5,000 on top of what we already agreed, yes? Agreed. You hear that, Mar? Heard it, Captain. Haggling over fees made Kedron feel more like himself, more in control of events. He looked to Relin. And what about you? How do you plan to get aboard the cruiser? I need Mar to fly me in. In where? Into the ship. Kedron scoffed, then frowned when he saw that Relin was serious. That isn't happening. Relin's jaw tightened and loosened, masticating his thoughts. My Padawan died trying to bring that ship down. I'm going back aboard and destroying what needs destroying. There's only one way for me to do that. We fly this ship right down its throat. Fly my ship, you mean? Yes, your ship, Relin's tone turned earnest. Listen to me. Harbinger's weapon systems are down. They have to be. Otherwise, we would have blown your ship from space already. Say's had to deploy fighters to attack you rather than his batteries. So Mar flies your ship out of the rings and into the landing bay before they can stop us. You look a lot less sick when you're talking about risking lives, Kedron said. The ship has active deflectors. How do you propose getting through those? He felt a pang of guilt even asking the question. Relin's expression fell. The shields? I don't know. Kedron did know, but could not bring himself to mouth the words. There has to be a way, Relin said. Kedron stared at Mar, who was pouring calf, willing him to hold his silence, but the Sarian ignored him. We could use the power crystal to open a temporary hole in the shields. Kedron blew out an irritated sigh. Jaden looked startled. You have a power crystal? Kedron glared at Mar, at Jaden, at Relin. We've used it twice to board uncrewed derelicts when the autopilot kept the shields operational. Where did you get it? Jaden asked. There's a whole lot of things floating in the black, Jedi. I told you that. Just need to know where to look. Jaden looked around as if he expected a power crystal to burst out of a closet. Where is it? In my pocket, Kedron snapped. Then recovered himself, mounted on the beam projector behind Junker's dish. It is a power sink, Mar said. We'll have to divert most of our power to operate it. But it should work. The problem appears solved, Relin said. Thank you, Mar. Yes, thank you, Mar, Kedron said. Relin went on as if he had not heard Kedron's sarcasm. Sayes will not expect it. He thinks we're destroyed. The Blade's flying patrol will be too far out, and none of the fighters on the ship will scramble in time to intercept us. That is madness, Kedron said. Mar, did you hear this? I heard it, Captain. Mar returned to the table, distributed the calf. Kedron raised his eyebrows. And? What other choice is there? We go back to Faust. Forget this whole thing, Kedron said. But everyone responded as if he had not spoken at all. Events had passed him by. That gets you aboard, Jaden said. How do you get back? Relin hesitated a beat too long, Kedron thought. Mar need only drop me off and get back out. He could jump anywhere he wanted to after that, or he could flee back into the rings until you and Jaden returned from the moon. Mar pulled back a chair, sat. The fighters will pursue, and I cannot pilot Junker through the rings. I'd have to jump out and return later. Kedron tried to sip his calf, but his hand was shaking. Embarrassed, he put the cup down. You are seriously entertaining this. This is not a plan. It's madness. That tells us how Mar gets out, Jaden said, and leaned forward. How do you plan to get out? This time Relin answered a beat too quickly. Escape pod, same as before. Jaden and Relin shared a long look before Relin buried his eyes in the depths of his tea. When does all this happen? Kedron said, dreading the answer. Relin looked up. Now. Kel held Predator at a distance from the cruiser and followed on his scanner as the fighters nosed up and out of the rings and returned from their pursuit of Junker. There were several fewer than had entered. Kell decided that they had either lost the freighter or simply called off the pursuit. He knew they had not destroyed it. The skein of fate was too strong. Jaden Kor's destiny was not to die in laser fire. It was to die in Kell's hands, as Kell devoured his soup and transcended. Content that his destiny was destiny? Content that his destiny was unfolding as it should, he engaged Predator's low-output ion engines and piloted the ship near the edge of the rings. His baffles and screens would keep him invisible to the scanners of the cruiser. There he waited, a lurking spider. The opalescent moon glittered against the black of space. He watched it turn, the featureless ball where his life would find fulfillment. He could have surveyed the moon, reported his findings back to Darth Weirlock, but he would not. He would wait, watchful, and descend to its surface only when Jaden Kor did so. Their lines were knotted together in a common fate, tethered to each other, and he would put down on the moon only when pulled down by Jaden. He could no more go to the moon's surface without Jaden than a Twi'lek could separate its Leku. His hands were shaking, partly from hunger, partly from exultation. He had not fed since leaving Faust, nor would he. His next meal had to be, Jaden Kor. He powered down Predator but for the scanners, life support, and the speaker which played the Imperial beacon. The sound that had summoned all of them to this place, at this one time, and waited. "I will prep Junker," Mar said, and rose to leave. Kedron put his hands on the table, pushed himself up, as if he weighed 1,000 kilos. "And I will do something else. Stang, I cannot believe I agreed to this." The two Jedi said nothing, and he turned to go. When he stood in the hatch leading out, Kedron glanced back and said to Relin and Jaden, "Listen, when we get back to Faust, we gamble, all of us together. Yes? As reckless as you two are, I might actually win some credits, as long as Jaden doesn't cheat. You have credits in your time, Relin?" "Yes, of course." "Then you've got something I can win. You play Sabak?" "I don't know it." "I will teach you." Apparently thinking better before his exit, he returned to the food locker, poured and drank a final jigger of pulque. "I'll get Flotsam prepped. Then I will pray." Jaden smiled him on his way. After Kedron had gone, Relin too rose, but Jaden halted him with a word. "Stay." Relin eased back into his chair, grimacing at the pain in his ribs. But Jaden knew that physical pain was not driving him. He waited until he was sure Kedron would not return. Before Jaden spoke, Relin said, "You do not need to say it." But Jaden did. "Anger is pouring off you. I feel it more strongly than I do the effect of the lignin. Says must pay, my Padawan. You will lose yourself, Relin, and you cannot do that. You have made yourself steward of Mar on this mission." Relin's lip curled in a snarl. "He understands the risk. And it was your words that encouraged him to do something meaningful." Jaden heard the contempt in Relin's tone and knew the man was nearly gone. Yet he could not deny Relin's accusation. "You bring him back with you, understood? I want your word." Relin brushed his dark hair off his forehead, and Jaden was struck with how pale and drawn the man appeared. "I will see that he returns." Jaden knew he would get no more. The silence sat heavy between them. More than just 5,000 years separated them. "What did you do, Jaden?" Relin asked at last. At first Jaden did not understand, but when he saw the knowing look on Relin's face, his heart jumped at the implicit accusation. "What do you mean?" Relin leaned forward, his watery, bloodshot eyes nailing Jaden to his chair. "Anger pours off me. Well, doubt pours off you. Uncertainty. I know what gives birth to that." "What did you do?" Jaden drew on his calf, hiding his face behind the mug's rim. In his mind's eye he saw the faces through the viewport, pleading with him not to do it. Relin smiled, though. He managed to make it look unpleasant. Something that shattered your image of yourself, yes? Jaden set down his cup and confessed. Yes. Relin chuckled, the first genuine mirth Jaden had heard from him. The Jedi have not changed in 5,000 years. Our expectation of ourselves always exceeds the reality. I have no wisdom for you, Jaden. He stood, extended a hand. Good luck. I need to figure out a way to get my lightsaber charged. Jaden stood, took his hand, a bit puzzled by Relin's parting words. He considered offering Relin the lightsaber he had crafted as a boy on Coruscant, since it required no power pack, but he knew Relin would not accept it. Mar will be able to help, I'm sure, Jaden said. I am sure, Relin said. Before he exited the galley, Jaden said to his back, May the Force be with you, Relin. Relin did not slow. Kedron found Mar in Junker's cockpit, checking its instrumentation, testing systems. Kedron hesitated in the doorway, thinking of all the flights he and Mar had sat beside each other in the cramped space, while Junker hurtled through the black. The ship had carried them through some dangerous times. He cleared his throat. Mar glanced over his shoulder, but did not turn to face him. She ready? Kedron asked. Indeed, Mar said. The damage was minimal, and she weathered the strain on the engines remarkably well, probably due to your fine-tuning. Kedron recognized the praise as a gesture of reconciliation. He put a hand on the wall, felt the cool durasteel of his ship under his hand, and offered his own gesture. Been a while since she's flown without both of us sitting up here. Indeed, Mar said, more softly. Kedron shook off the sentimentality, stepped forward, and performed a cursory glance over the instrumentation, not really seeing it. These Jedi go all in, don't they? Mar smiled, stood, turned to face him. They do. Push until it gives, right? Right, Kedron smiled too, but it faded quickly. I'm still not entirely sure why we're doing this. It is the right thing, Mar said. How are you always so certain, Mar? This isn't math. I am not always certain, but I am about this. Because you learned you're force sensitive? Mar colored. Maybe. Partially. Kedron did not press. He thought of all the scrapes he and Mar had been through the past 6 years, and realized that all of them had been of his own making. Mar had simply followed his lead and respected Kedron's call. Kedron figured he owed Mar the same, at least this once. Try not to get Junker shot up, eh? And you are on shuttle service, and that's an order. If it gets too hairy, you abort and jump out of the system, no matter what Relin says. If you get aboard that cruiser, you drop off that Jedi and get out. Flotsam can get Jaden and me out of the system if need be. Mar did not respond, and Kedron liked the silence not at all. That's an order, Mar. Understood? I will do my best, Mar said. Kedron gave him a gentle shove. You come back with the same look in your eyes as that Jedi, and I'm throwing you off the ship for good. Mar smiled, the tooth he'd chipped in a brawl Kedron had started on Dantooine, a jagged reminder of his loyalty. Kedron looked out the cockpit window at the grainy, rough surface of the asteroid in which Jaden had set Junker down. This didn't exactly go as planned, did it? He said. It rarely does, Mar said. Variables. Always variables. A fist formed in Kedron's throat. He stared at his reflection on the transparisteel and swallowed it down. He wanted to say more to the best and only real friend he'd had since leaving the Empire of the Hand as a young man, but managed only to turn, reach out, and say, Good luck. Mar took Kedron's hand, shook it. And you. Kedron took one last look around Junker's cockpit, moved past Mar, and started to go, but Mar's voice pulled him around. Captain, for you. Kedron turned to find Mar holding out a stick of chew stem. He took it, supposing it said all that needed to be said. When Kedron had Flotsam prepped and loaded with envirogear, he got on Junker's shipwide communicator. All hands to the galley one more time. Attendance is mandatory. He took a roundabout way to the galley, walking Junker's corridors, cognizant of the fact that it and Mar might not return from Harbinger's landing bay. If they made it to the landing bay. If they made it to the landing bay. He knew he was getting sentimental, knew, too, that he could not afford to do so. He was the captain, and as such, had certain obligations. Beginning with this one, he thought. When he reached the galley, he found Jaden, Relin, and Mar standing at the table, looking questions at one another. Time is short, Relin said. Got to make time for this, Kedron said. He went to the food locker, pulled 4 drink glasses, and poured all of them a double from the only bottle of decent Kila he kept on the ship. He carried the glasses to the other 3 men and handed one to each in turn. Relin sniffed at the glass. I do not consume alcohol, he said. You do now, Kedron said. Captain's orders. Relin half smiled and relented with a shrug. Kedron held aloft his glass, and the others mirrored his gesture. With nothing better to say, he recited an old spacer's toast he remembered from his adolescence. Drink it down, boys, for the black of space is cold. Drink it down, boys, for it's always better to live hard and die young than live not and die old. Everyone smiled. No one laughed. All drank. Kedron slammed his glass down on the table. We go. And that is the end of that chapter. All right. So we're not quite 2/3 of the way through the book. Yeah, that wasn't so bad. Last night's reading was 2 hours because it was a long chapter. But anyway, that'll be that for this Star Wars session. And I will take a break, end this session, and be back in a little bit to play some Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. I'll see you then.
Prepare to die. Prepare to die. Welcome to a whole new world. Your planet is now under Mid-Ranger's control. Humanity will be exterminated. If you hear this message, do not try to leave. Do not try to fight. Do not try to resist. You will be eliminated. You will be eliminated. Die. Prepare to die. Welcome to a whole new world. Your planet is now under mid-rangers' control. Humanity will be exterminated. If you hear this message, do not try to leave. Do not try to fight. Do not try to resist. You will be eliminated.